This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry with agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH and your local Case IH dealer.
This past week, farmers gathered in Louisville for the National Farm Machinery Show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio because Max Armstrong this past week had the chance to be in Louisville, Kentucky, talking to growers at the National Farm Machinery Show. Innovations have continued in agriculture. They are on display down there, and Max had the chance to catch up with farmers from across the country.
Well, Mike, there was the feeling that there was some catching up to do here at the Louisville Farm Show after missing a show last year. Many of these farmers were ready to come again. Of course, they had just watched a few days ago those thousands of people pack a stadium to watch the Super Bowl, so they knew it was possible to all come together once more. I think there was also the feeling that they needed to see what the latest is in terms of product offerings from these companies. A little bit of catching up there to do as well in terms of one-on-one visits. Willie Vogt with Farm Progress talked with us about that.
Well, it's exciting. Of course, we missed it completely in 2021. They didn't, not even virtual. So it's good to be here and see some familiar people already. We've been here this morning early before the gates open, and we've already run into many people we know. So it's exciting, definitely.
Many of the products farmers and ranchers have seen already, either in Decatur, Illinois, Boone, Iowa, or Grand Island, Nebraska. But at this show, there's a great opportunity to visit with the individual exhibitors as well. What are you seeing here in terms of trends in the ag industry right now that maybe are very apparent in a show like this?
One thing that will be apparent in a show like this, and this year, is just getting ready with inputs. Inputs are higher, so there may be that. The other side is parts. We just did a Farm Progress panel study that showed more than half the people who responded to that panel don't feel they're ready to plant, partly because of parts or inputs, and that's disconcerting. So I think one thing, if you come to this show, there are many parts suppliers that are on hand that could maybe fill in that gap.
And you can bet the Kentuckiana economy in this area around Louisville missed the National Farm Machinery Show too. David Beck, who oversees Kentucky venues here, talked with us about the mighty contribution that this show makes to the area's economy.
The impact of this show itself is between $22 and $23 million economic impact is projected. It may be more than that, or some years it may be less, but that's the target that's estimated for what its value is to our community.
I've always been impressed, David, with the geography represented by those who attend this show. Very commonly, you'll meet people from Ontario to Florida, even out as far away as the Rockies, Texas, and the Dakotas. Do you think the pandemic and the limitations on travel for some would hurt the crowd a little bit this year?
Yes, on a pre-COVID year, we would have close to 300,000 people coming through our doors. We anticipate it could always change. We think it'd probably be 250,000 this year, so we'll see a drop off with that for two reasons. One, COVID. Some people still aren't comfortable traveling in that scenario. Others, from a financial budget standpoint. Everybody's tightening the belt. We've had tough years with our economy, both on the farm as well as in the agribusiness community and every industry. And the tourism industry has been hit pretty hard too with that. So that's caused everybody to tighten up. Maybe when you send 6, maybe now you just send 2 or 4. You won't send as many people. So that may be part of the factor. But I tell you what, as I have reached out and heard from producers and exhibitors from around the country, they've been looking forward to this show. People are anxious to get out.
Farmers are very much involved in helping plan for this show too. Marshall Coyle serves on the Kentucky Fair Board. He's a cow-calf man about 120 miles east of Louisville.
I'm a farmer by trade, so it's so important to me to have this farm machinery show. You know, we could not have it last year because of COVID, and it's just great to be back and see this place full of farm equipment and the tractor pullers here, as well as the farmers coming in and seeing what all they can find.
I've often said this is a cabin fever break in the wintertime. It allows folks to get away from feeding cattle, watering cattle, having somebody else handle that chore for a day or two. It's nice to have a break to come away. You know that life very well, don't you?
Oh, I know it extremely well. You know, now my son would probably say, I wish my daddy was here feeding for me today, but without him, I could not do all I do on Fair Board and Farm Bureau. But it's just an honor to be able to serve here you know, our Fair Board has made so much progress. You come in here in mid-February, we've got 1.2 million square feet of climate control space. So once you get in here, you don't have to worry about the weather. We keep it nice and warm in here.
Marshall, you meet the nicest people here, I've always said, and many of those folks are with the companies that exhibit here. And some of them are huge Wall Street traded companies, and others are little products that guys have started in their farm shops. It's an interesting combination, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And one great thing I like about the Farm Machinery Show is that there's a lot of small manufacturers here, and this may be the best opportunity in the world for our farmers to be able to meet them, look at their products, and make their decision about what they want to buy.
And I must say, Mike, we personally enjoyed visiting with the families who come to this show each year and answering the frequent questions. What's that Mike Pearson like? How's Orion doing? I was pleased to fill in the answers.
Well, thank you, Max, for that update from Louisville, and thanks to all of our fans for asking about us. I hope you told them I'm doing very well. One of the things we are watching, though, are the markets. Lots of volatility. To help us make sense, Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions joins me this weekend. And Brian, soybeans have been moving this week. We touched that $16 mark again. Where does the bean market go from here?
That's $1 million question, Mike. You know, we're looking at probably higher prices yet to come. I think there has been some damage in South America that's not going to be repairable with any rain showers that they've had. So the crop size of beans in Brazil and in Argentina both are being downgraded and will probably continue to be downgraded. We're continuing to see strong export business for our product for this marketing year, next marketing year, China and unknown destinations coming in and being pretty aggressive buyer. That's tightening our U.S. balance sheets. And last fall we thought corn was the market that was going to have to bid up for acres, and it's turned out to be the soybean market that needs to buy some acres this spring because of all the export business that we've been doing here through the winter months. So soybeans have really led the charge higher on new crop soybeans. And so as we go into the planting time frame, we are looking for higher prices for both corn, soybeans, especially if crude oil remains strong, cotton remains strong, and some of these other markets that would compete for acres with soybeans and with corn.
Brian, these exports have been picking up really quickly in the soybean sector. Where are most of them going? Who have most of the announcements been for?
Well, it's either been the U.S. has either sold to China or an unknown destination with some spot sales to Mexico. And the trade really believes that this unknown destination is going to end up being China, and rightfully so. That's history has told us that they eventually get switched to Chinese origin. So we believe that that is the case, and it looks like China is pretty aggressive in marketing for the new crop marketing year 22-23. This morning they came out with another sale of soybeans for this old crop marketing year. And then when you talk about the unknown destination, that's what we're expecting to see that to end up being China as well. There just is not that much crop to sell out of South America, either Brazil or Argentina. They're going to have a much smaller crop. In fact, there's talk that parts of Argentina may actually start importing soybeans for crushing into meal in that country because they just don't have enough domestic supply.
Wow, that is a big change. Brian, you talk to growers all across the country. As soybean prices have rallied, where do you think the acreage mix is going to fall this year?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, interesting topic of discussion, and most people are really not moving off of their center line. They believe that they have a good rotation, and they're going to stick to that. Now, the one caveat may be corn on corn. We may see less of that planted this year, and some of that shifted over to soybeans because of the higher fertilizer requirements to plant corn on corn again. So those acres, I think, will be limited or reduced out of corn and back into soybeans. That'll pick up those acres just a little bit, reduce the amount of corn that's been seeded, but it's probably going to be fairly minimal, less than 2-3 million acres overall.
All right. Brian, on the wheat market, is the volatility there mainly the cause or because of the Ukrainian-Russian border tensions?
Yeah, exactly. Right now the wheat market doesn't have a real supply issue because the crop is in dormancy in the United States and receiving some moisture. And it won't really come out of dormancy for another month or so, and then we'll start talking about supply type issues for that market. So what we're left to trade off of is exports, which have been very, very slow this winter, very poor exports for the United States wheat market. But when we may open the door with Russia, if they do invade the Ukraine, Ukraine may not be able to export as much wheat. We expect Russia would follow suit, that they would not be exporters of much wheat, and that could open the door for U.S. exports. So wheat's really a follower of corn and soybeans at this point in time. And also, if there is an invasion, we could see a real spike in wheat values in a real quick manner.
All right, things to keep an eye on. We'll come back and talk corn with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions after this. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by AgriGold, your seed ally in the field, with unparalleled options that perform on your farm. Learn more at agrigold.com. We're discussing the markets with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Brian, this corn market is running as well. Old crop right around that 650 mark. How should producers be handling any old crop bushels they've got on the farm?
Well, last year the market told us, in the soybeans anyway, to make cash sales off the combine because the prices were higher than what they were for March and for May into July futures, and then come back in and reel in the crop with futures and options in the deferred contracts. It's the old buy low, sell high type mentality. The corn market's flashing the same signal right now. The March and May contracts virtually the same at about $6.50 a bushel, but if you go out to July, there's a discount of 7 cents. So you actually, if you were looking at the board, if you have crop in storage and we're going to hedge today, you'd lose 7 cents by storing it and selling it in July. So that's a losing proposition. The market's telling you to go ahead and make the cash sale today and then buy July futures or buy July options as a reownership strategy. So that's what the market's telling you to do. It's a less risky way than carrying all the risk in the cash markets. The cash basis levels certainly on fire around a lot of the Midwest. We have basis, talking to clients in Northwest Iowa, a positive basis in that area, and that's just unheard of. It used to be 30 to 40 cents under, and now it's 5, almost 10 cents over in some locations. So it's hard to argue with selling cash corn at $6.50 or even better, and just hard to talk any producer out of doing that. I would think you'd want to take advantage of that if you are a producer.
Sell when you can, not when you have to. Brian, on the new crop side of the corn ledger, we're just under $6. Watching that South American weather situation, could the corn market still pop if the dryness persists in Brazil?
Yeah, absolutely. We have dryness in Brazil, Argentina, so those are areas that we are definitely watching now. But there's dryness that's persisting on all the western corn belt here in the United States as well, from Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, all the way up into the Dakotas and Montana, Northwest Iowa, extremely, extremely dry, and even no snow this winter to try and help replenish some of those soils. So we may go into the springtime with very little, if any, subsoil moisture. Topsoil moisture be very dry. I think that's a concern as we get into the planting time frame, and it should be supportive for our prices. So, $6 looks attractive on a new crop basis, but I think there may actually be some more upside as we go into that planting time frame, and maybe we start talking about a battle for acres between soybeans and cotton market, which has been surging higher. Maybe spring wheat gets into the mix here, and winter wheat as well, as there may be high abandonment rates of the wheat market this year. So there's a lot of variables, but I do think corn's going to have give producers a real strong opportunity to sell above $6 for fall delivery this year.
All right, well, that would be good news to a lot of corn growers looking at these input prices. Brian, over on the cattle market, looks like the cash trade got a little stronger this week. What have you seen?
Yeah, we'll really start with the slaughter pace for the cattle market. We have been watching the cattle slaughter. That's a sign that the packers need cattle. We're going to have another 650,000 head kill week this week. That'd be the third consecutive week. And when you do that, it really accomplishes two things. It brings the cash markets up, and we've seen strength in the Southern Plains cash of $142 being traded this week. That's $2 better than a week ago. Dress cattle at least steady to $1 higher than a week ago. So it accomplishes bringing the cash markets up, but it also hurts your box beef values. And packers have a lot of margin to work with, so they're going to try and kill as many cattle as they possibly can, take advantage of their big margins. But those margins are starting to fall a little bit with the drop in the boxes. And until we start to drop the slaughter pace back, the boxes will continue to weaken. So that's a kind of just a function of how the cattle market works as far as increasing slaughter and demand for this product.
Indeed. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions, thanks for joining us this week.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
In agriculture, so much of our technology has to be connected to the internet. We've got to have a good connection to that World Wide Web. Chad Colby's been doing some digging, and he's found a new alternative for folks in rural America.
Last week in our tech segment, we talked about some of the great new technology around wireless routers. But for me, my network here, that's not the challenge. The challenge is I need faster internet. And even though I'm just a few miles from town, my internet options here are very bleak at best. The local provider, they do a great job, but the internet, well, it's just not that fast. As you can see right here, the fastest I can get from them is 50 down and only 10 meg up, and that's almost $200 a month. As most of you may know, Elon Musk has got an internet venture called Starlink. So I asked Twitter this week, is anyone using Starlink? And let me tell you, I got a ton of replies. The most interesting part about all these replies you can see here is none of them were negative. They were all positive. So that challenge of getting really good high-speed internet in rural America, yeah, friends, this could be a real solution. I ordered one of these systems about 3 months ago. That's really the only downfall today. It takes 3 to 6 months at least to get one, so I'm hoping mine shows up pretty soon. As far as the cost, it's $500 for the machine, and then you pay $100 a month. And currently, there's no limitations on that. And from what I've read, it's super easy to hook up. In fact, it doesn't even come with a book. You just download the app like you see here on the right-hand side of the screen, and it walks you through the process. Again, I'm pretty excited about this, and as you learned today, there's a lot of other people that are as well. It's pretty easy to find more information about this, and don't worry, I will definitely keep you up to speed. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. It's nice to see some new alternatives coming to rural America. Stay with us. Later on in This Week in Agribusiness, we're going to go back to the National Farm Machinery Show. Max has an update from our friends at Case IH. Thanks for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. Looking at the market prices out there, cash prices for corn and soybeans are really solid, and a lot of growers are loading up that old crop corn out of their bins. They're hauling it to town to make some sales. This is the week to be careful. Folks, February 20th through the 26th is Grain Bin Safety Week here in the United States. Over the past 5 years, over 150 farmers have been engulfed in grain, and those are the reported incidents. It's estimated that about 30% of grain entrapment goes unreported. Of those over 150, 81 deaths have been caused by entrapment in grain over the past 5 years. It is a very serious, very important issue, and Brad Liggett, the president of Nationwide Agribusiness, said many of these deaths are preventable. They could have been stopped if farmers took the time to be patient, reflect, and be cautious when they're working around their grain bins. This next week, Grain Bin Safety Week is recognized by states around the country. It's recognized by Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, New York, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Illinois. All of these states are looking to find ways to come together to reduce entrapment deaths in agriculture. And I mentioned Brad Liggett. Nationwide Agribusiness has been a big partner in Grain Bin Safety Week. Since 2014, they have ensured more than 207 grain bin rescue tubes have been shipped out to fire departments and rescue departments around the country. These have been used to save farmers in grain entrapment incidents. So do be sure to check out grainbinsafetyweek.com. Nationwide has opened up the opportunity to nominate your local fire department or EMS team if they work in rural areas, if they work in a place where grain bin entrapments could be real, could be happening. Get online. Head out to grainbinsafetyweek.com. You can find all the information there to nominate your local fire department or EMS and help ensure that your community stays safe in the event there is a grain bin entrapment in your neighborhood. Also, Max down in Louisville had a chance to catch up on social media, and he's got a few choice tweets for us.
I know you follow my tweets at times, Mike, and I see what you put out there for the public to view. I wanted to share 3 of my favorites from the past week, tweets of the week. There's this one, Farm Shop Artist Studio. I was in Bill Burnham's shop the other day in Illinois looking at the restoration he's doing on a JI case plow, a little bit different plow. It was used for demonstration purposes by M&W, but look at the quality of the paint going on there. Yes, it truly is artistic. Another tweet that I shared was a sad one from Oregon. He grew hops, he fought fires. Farmer, firefighter Austin Smith died when a barn exploded during a fire called a few days ago. When they held the funeral service for him, there were some 5,000 people who attended, some 400 pieces of firefighting equipment assembled there. Oh, and about the interstates, interstate highways. I retweeted Chad Colby's tweet showing maps of the interstates in the United States, those that run north and south and those that run east and west. I said, which is your least favorite? That brought quite a response from a number of farmers and ranchers. John's Calf Orphanage posted about his least favorite. He said it's Interstate 90. He lives beside it, and the fear of having 500 calves out on that interstate keeps him awake at night. Well, we invite folks to follow our tweets. I'll be following you, Mr. Mike, at Pearson Cattle on Twitter. And then, of course, it's Max Armstrong on Twitter.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
There has been a great deal of discussion recently about war between Russia and the Ukraine. But let me talk about a war that's closer to home than that war. And that's the war here in the United States between the oil industry and ethanol producers, or corn growers. There are several committee hearings going on Capitol Hill right now to discuss the renewable fuel standard. It has always been a point of controversy between the oil industry and corn growers of the United States. But committees of the House and Senate are holding hearings around the nation's biofuel blending laws as the Biden administration works to finalize controversial proposals around blending requirements and exemptions for oil refiners. The committee is holding a series of meetings because the RFS has consistently pitted the oil and corn lobbies against each other, both major political constituency groups that are top of the mind for politicians as the United States readies for midterm elections later this year. If you're a corn grower and an ethanol producer, you better pay attention to this one because it's been going on, but it could get closer to resolution. And that could be detrimental to corn producers because of the strength of the oil industry that feels it's being treated unfairly in the current terms of the RFS situation. So pay attention, and let's hope the corn producers are able to win this one. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Later on in the program, Max had the chance to catch up with the folks at Case IH. He talked about supply chain disruptions and machine availability. He'll discuss all of that later on This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Thanks for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a market watcher, you have probably seen the volatility in the soybean markets. A lot of that is because of the weather down in Brazil. Well, the Iowa Soybean Association took a group of farmers down there to get a first-hand look, and Rob Ewald, Iowa farmer and president of the Iowa Soybean Association, joins us today. Rob, where all did you guys go when you were down in Brazil?
Well, it seemed like we toured the whole darn country, to be honest with you, Mike. We landed in Sao Paulo, and then we ended up on the Amazon at Manaus to see what that river looks like and how they move those soybeans out of there. And then we ended up Mato Grosso State, and quite an experience to see all the soybean acres that are in Mato Grosso. And then at the end, then we ended up down in the state of Paraná. Very short, brief visit, and then we headed home.
Rob, a lot of us have never seen the Amazon River. What's it look like down there in Brazil?
Well, as a boy growing up on the Mississippi River, I always thought we had a pretty darn big river until I got down there. Where the Negro and the Amazon flow together, it was roughly 200 to 300 feet deep, and it was probably 3 miles wide, maybe 4 miles wide. It was a massive river. We saw ocean-going vessels coming up. You know, we're inland about 500 to 600 miles there, and they're bringing ocean-going vessels in to fill up. So it was pretty impressive.
That is incredible to see. And then, of course, you traveled to Mato Grosso, as you mentioned, to the largest soybean producing state in Brazil. We've heard a lot about drought, but it's a different challenge in Mato Grosso. Rob, what'd you learn?
Well, when they harvest their first crop beans or their only crop beans in Mato Grosso, it's during the wet season. So they need to be able to work in amongst the rain. And so we watched combines running within 10 hours after a 5-inch rain. We also watched them harvesting 25 to 30% moisture beans and drying them. So,
wow. Given all the rainfall in Mato Grosso, how's the bean quality coming here during harvest?
This latter part, when we were there, they were about 65 to 70% harvested. We were starting to see of those beans that were still standing, maybe they were starting to get a little black. Looks like there might be some issues coming down the road if they kept getting the amount of rains that they were receiving when we were there. It rained every day we were in Mato Grosso State.
Wow. And then, of course, you had the chance to meet with farmers. As we think about the challenges that farmers in this country are facing, fertilizer prices and supply chain disruptions are top on the list. What's the story down in Brazil?
That's the same. I mean, we were talking to some of those farmers, and they were having issues trying to get some chemical in, and they're going to use twice as much a year because they're double crop, and so they really have an issue there. And when it came to equipment and stuff, they really didn't seem to say that they had any problems getting new equipment right now. There was no real lag in their supply chain as far as parts goes when we talked to them. But, it is a concern on the herbicide end, insecticide end. It's a concern.
Rob, as you talk to growers and you look out to the future, did it seem like Brazilian farmers are going to continue to increase their soy acreage?
Oh, I definitely see that. We took a meeting with the Mato Grosso Farm Bureau, and they showed us some numbers and what they project in the next 10 years. And to be honest, it's not really good news for the American farmer, because they have a lot of ground that they could bring into production. Not stuff that they're clearing, but it's pasture ground. They've figured out how to feed cattle in feedlots, and they can turn that pasture into crop ground. So that's what we got to look out for in the future.
Yeah, Brazil is going to be a market maker for some time to come. Rob Ewald, president of the Iowa Soybean Association, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
A lot of folks across the country saw a more active weather week this past week. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins me. Greg, as you look out to the week ahead, what's going to be coming ashore in the Pacific Northwest?
And that storm last week that hit the heartland originated in the Pacific Northwest, but it was so fast moving, not much in the way of any significant moisture there. And that is the story this week right here again, with just a couple of weak disturbances on the move. The Arctic air is retooling, and yeah, there's another winter storm once again. The divide onto the east, and here is some of that bitter cold laying out across the Dakotas. Upslope snow, where snow cover has been pretty absent at times over the western Dakotas and parts of Nebraska and points on southward, but again, not much in the way of any substantial moisture gain in the Pacific Northwest. A shot of colder air, chilly weather, and a couple of snow showers across areas of the Bitterroots and through the Divide country. Arctic air spills on southward again with another run of sub-zero cold. Boy, it was barbaric over the past week to 10 days. Some of those areas to the Canadian Prairie down to 40 and 45 below zero. Not much going on in the gauges as well into Northern California. The Sierra ranges, the precip totals, now the snowpack, just 75% of normal and no sign of anything organized. Another fast-moving disturbance that will energize as it makes its way into the plains. Look at some of the snows breaking out where it's been absent here over parts of the central high plains, and a rush of wind as well, and some colder air settling southward into the four corners. Here's this weather system getting wound up. Here's the upper air support here, not here, so we draw down cooler air as opposed to the 80s and the rapid snowmelt already off the Sierra. Back to more normalized temperatures, but it is an active weather pattern here across the plains with more barbaric cold, if you will, from about the Black Hills on northward here later on in the week.
Well, Greg, does that active weather pattern extend further into the central part of the U.S.?
It does. We're just getting cleaned up and mopped up after the flooding rain, the snow melt, an inch to almost 3 inches worth of rain here. We're going to do it all over again. Here's that Arctic air up near the Canadian border. Here's the next snow system making its way across the central plains. It'll take more of a southerly route, but once again, winter storm conditions expected to play on out, perhaps even some localized blizzard conditions, parts of the central plains into the upper Midwest. Later in the week, the next in a little series of lows along the periphery of this cold may bring once again some snow and some ice potential where we had it last week into parts of the southwest and central Corn Belt. Here's the heart of the cold air locking in and likely to stay there for the foreseeable future. Southern plains, the driest of the drought has been expanding again. You got moisture. You may not like the form of it. Tough on livestock, these up and down temperature patterns. And here it is, some snow and ice breaking out early to middle parts of the week for Kansas, Oklahoma. Again, showers and thunderstorms. We had severe weather in this area last week. We're going to do it again. It is that time of the year. Into the lower Mississippi Valley region, we'll likely see additional outbreaks of moisture over the deep south and Mississippi Valley locales. Cold air locks in through Kansas on northward, cooler, and a couple of showers of rain and snow into the mountains of New Mexico.
How about taking us over to the East Coast, Greg? What do you see developing?
A snow melt last week, an inch or two of rain, and look at the influx of milder weather for this week, all the way up through down to eastern Maine with rain through the Ohio Valley, a couple of thunderstorms on the colder side. That is frigid air up towards the Soum. Northern Lakes region got another round of snow, but pretty delightful. A hint of early spring into the mid-Atlantic region. That will change in the Ohio Valley. This low will track along the leading edge of Arctic air with snows breaking out through the Great Lakes region. Showers and thunderstorms and rapid snow melt. Keeping an eye on these ice jamming effects, streams and rivers across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, into the Northeast and New England last week and again for this week as well. Southeastern part of the country, nice, delightful feel expected to continue on. Warmth over this part of the country. A couple of showers down through Florida. Severe storms on this low coming across parts of the Red River Valley of the South. And as the week wears on, showers and thunderstorms on the increase will turn heavy and severe from the Delta region into the Carolinas on the backside. Snow and ice as far south as the Red River Valley of the South.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Greg Solier is with us talking about the weather. And Greg, you mentioned next week might be active. Who's going to get the precipitation?
And moisture laden in one form or another. We kid about the kitchen sink, but it's all come down over the past week, including severe weather. And we'll do it all over again. This time, the cold air a little more farther entrenched east and south. So, yeah, we had snow and ice down here last week. We'll do it again into the Red River Valley of the South. It's moisture at least. Livestock's not going to like it. And the corridor will shift with the colder air. Snow and ice farther south and southeast of the Ohio Valley. Melted all down 1/2 to 1, some spots another 2. So yeah, the specter of flooding is back into play in this part of the country. Into the northeast of New England, another couple of inches over the southeastern part of the country. Not a lot going on over the high plains areas. Some scattered moisture, Northern California, maybe into the Pacific Northwest, but largely that drought pattern continues on into the west and southwest, but some relief here, and the drought monitor had a little relief as well last week across the eastern Dakotas.
Greg, as you look at that first full week of March, how does the temperature setup appear at this point?
Beginning of meteorological spring, March 1, a bookkeeping thing for us weather geeks, if you will, but no spring in this forecast here. Look at the cold and probably more sub-zero cold Canadian prairie. There's a lot of snow on the ground. These cold air masses like to migrate to snow-covered areas, so this could be the story here into springtime. It will be, by the way, the cool to cold air. Warmth, if you will, up the eastern seaboard. Some cooler weather across the valleys of California and the Pacific Northwest, where we're still dry through Texas, much of the southwest, the western states. Active weather pattern here. Look at how this jet stream buckles and swings to the north and northeast. The old negative tilt trough, that means in the weather business, a lot of storminess here over this part of the country, including snow, ice, and rain.
Now, how about the week after, the week of March 7th? Greg, what do you expect to see temperature-wise?
Now, some shifting around of the cold air, but largely entrenched here, a little flatter, more quicker movement to the steering course. So they are fast moving when you get this disparity in range of temperatures north to south across the country. So still wintertime here. A little spring break action across the deep south, southeastern part of the country, southwest as well. Normal temperatures in between, and not much in the way of a normal weather pattern here anywhere across the heartland into the Corn Belt. More late season snow and ice, probably some rain into areas of the mid-Atlantic region where this is a drought area. That is certainly okay. Watch the runoff potential as well. Still dry through Texas, southwest into the Pacific Northwest. The moisture deficits continue on there.
Greg, the week ending March 20th, do you see the temps starting to warm up at all? Feel more spring-like?
We're trying here. March the 20th, the official start to springtime, if you will. Here it is in the central time zone. And this cold air is going to stay locked into position. We probably, as we advance into April as well, just going to see some oscillation back and forth of this cold air. Systems will run the periphery of the warmth as it builds once again through the west, mostly deep southeastern part of the country. Here is the main trough position. And so I don't have a lot of early season field work opportunities. Some moisture is good news here. There'll be additional late season snows through the Midwest, northern plains into the northeast and New England. Probably severe weather in this corridor as well. Normal precipitation over the southeastern part of the country. Not a lot of good news in the forecast from a moisture gain standpoint through West Texas, southwestern sections of the country into the Pacific Northwest. And this is probably a good snapshot, this corridor right here, of anticipated wet weather and field work, and probably lack of field work access as we get deeper into the planting season and through the months of April and May.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
At Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, Larry Hawking and his old John Deere tractor that he started driving as a boy, a very young man. We're together a long time. In fact, the tractor was at the cemetery when he was laid to rest the other day. Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Store-Lock Tool Cabinets. We've enjoyed hanging out with Store-Lock at the National Farm Machinery Show. That sturdy quality we talk about right here. If you couldn't get to the show and you want more information, you can go to their website, storelock.com. Well, Larry Hawking, when he was 6 years old, learned to start his grandpa's John Deere A, an A made in 1938. And that was quite a feat that he could start it by himself. There was no electric start on that tractor. Well, as the tractors advanced over the years, Larry's grandpa got rid of that A and went on across the state line into Indiana, but he found the tractor. And as his son Matt shared with me, they were able to locate the tractor because there was a weld right on the radiator where Larry and his brother had hooked up a chain and damaged the radiator trying to pull that old tractor many years ago. Well, they restored that A after getting it back in the family. They found it at an auction. They got it back in the family and restored it. And when Larry was laid to rest the other day, after 72 years on that farm in southeast Illinois, the John Deere A was standing guard at the cemetery there, not far from Mount Carmel, Illinois, in Wabash County, Illinois. Mark Stock is going to fill us in here. We caught up with him at the National Farm Machinery Show about what's coming across their auction block.
Well, Max, we're finishing up the last day here at the National Farm Machinery Show, and we've had a great crowd so far and a lot of activity and people looking at auction results and finding out what has recently sold, plus a lot of people talking about equipment and what they want to do in this hot market. Well, we do have a great lineup of equipment selling next week. Some of the items featured include Chief Carriers out of Grand Island, Nebraska. They have 3 2015 International ProStar 122 semi-truck tractors. Green Prairie Farms out of Tampico, Illinois. They're selling a fast 8430 pull-type sprayer and a Great Plains drill. In addition, folks, we've got Blaine County District 1 in Gary, Oklahoma, selling a 2006 Komatsu PC200 LC8 excavator. Plus, they've also got a John Deere 770 CH Series 2 motor grader. We've got Bender Transportation out of Bloomington, Illinois, selling a 2011 Freightliner Cascadia 125 semi-truck tractor. Just good quality equipment represented by the owners, selling to the highest bidder on BigIron.com. And we've got even more outstanding equipment coming up on the sale after this. So make your way to Big Iron, folks, and check out the quality equipment selling to the highest bidder with no reserves.
We're proud to continue getting to know FFAers from around the country. And this week we're meeting John Peterson. He's the South Dakota State FFA Vice President. John, what are you excited about as you look forward to this 2022 school year?
I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is getting to meet the new officer team after the April state convention. I'm excited to get to work with them and see what they're going to be bringing for South Dakota FFA in the future.
That comes in April, John. In the meantime, is there anything else happening in the short term that you're really fired up about? Are you meeting with some members?
Yeah, we got FFA week coming up, so I'm excited to get to travel around and hopefully see some different members from different chapters. And I believe next Friday we have a pancake feed over in Dubrook.
Ooh, there you go. A good breakfast to start the day. John, what was it that got you involved in FFA in the first place?
Well, to be honest, my mom told me I had to take an ag class when we moved here, and I didn't think I'd like it at first, but boy, was I wrong. I fell in love with everybody in the ag class, and my advisor really pushed me to get involved in FFA. So I just started volunteering for everything I could do and signing up for everything, and I just fell in love with the program and everything it has to offer.
And were you in leadership in high school of the program?
Yes, I was the chapter sentinel my sophomore year and then the chapter president both my junior and my senior year.
Fantastic,
as well
John.
as a district officer.
Okay, as you look out to the future, what do you hope your career is going to look like?
Well, I'm hoping to be an anesthesiologist, so I'm looking for a career in helping people, and I think that's what's important.
Yes, indeed, and communication is great, and all of those skills you've learned in FFA will probably help contribute to that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. FFA has helped me with my communication skills, being able to talk in public, and it's overall just made me a better person, so it's definitely going to help me in my future career.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. John Peterson, FFA Vice President, State of South Dakota. Up next on This Week in Agribusiness, Max reports once again from the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, talking to our friends at Case IH about the machinery they brought down there. Farmers in Louisville are taking advantage of one of the great things about trade shows, which is the ability to connect with the management at these organizations. Well, Max is no different. He had a chance to stop by the Case IH booth and talk to their folks about just what this year looks like from their perspective.
Mike, we thoroughly enjoyed walking around the show at Louisville and meeting so many farmer friends and a number of equipment booths there. For example, at Case IH, we had the chance to look at their display that was just jammed with new equipment. And we talked with Kurt Coffey.
We're coming off of a really, really good year, so a lot of smiles. And not only growers, but also a lot of our dealers are coming through here, and it's just been a great day to get back face-to-face. You know, we do business with our customers and dealers across the kitchen table, so being able to be face-to-face here in Louisville is great. I guess I would say there are a number of macro trends converging right now that, you know, really good economics, replacement demand's really strong because you're coming off some hard times in 15-16, and people want to upgrade, you know, with new technology. So those converging trends are really creating a lot of opportunity here at Case IH. But like I said, a lot of smiling faces here in Louisville.
I drove by one of the dealerships just a few days ago and looked over on the lot and saw, to my surprise, a remarkable availability. I mean, I know there have been some struggles. Every company has struggled with that in and out of agriculture, but I noticed more product.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked this question a few times today. It really is perspective. You know, there's a really strong demand because of those macro trends I explained, but if you look at our demand and output compared to what we were doing a year ago or even 2 or 3 years ago, the perspective is incredible. So there is a lot of volume. We're really, you know, number one, we're focused on satisfying the customer, arm in arm with our dealers. So fighting every day to make sure we can keep up with demand and fight through, you know, difficult times here with supply chain and post-COVID.
We noticed around that display of Case IH photos of farmers who also happen to be employees of Case IH. Marissa Riley, Director of Marketing with Case IH, talked with us about that.
At Case IH, we're proud to say that we're built by farmers. In fact, Case IH employees, our dealers, and their families farm collectively more than 1 million acres across North America. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's incredible. So why should you care? What does that mean? Our equipment is designed, engineered, and built by farmers, which means that passion, the creativity, the knowledge that they have on the farm, they're bringing that to work every day and really paying it off with equipment that's agronomically designed and more productive. And that type of sentiment is also what's going into partnerships like we have with country musician Lee Brice. You know, if you haven't heard the song Farmer, that's based on the grit and passion of our employees and even words that we've heard them say. And if you haven't listened to it, make sure to go to your favorite streaming platform. Listen to Lee Brice's song Farmer.
And Marissa shared with us, Mike, there should be much more to look forward to. We may see Lee Brice again, we understand. Look forward to being with the Case IH folks at the 2022 Farm Progress Show. That will be in Boone in August of this year.
Thank you, Max, for all your work down there in Louisville. We appreciate the opportunity to see just what's shaping up in the farm machinery industry as 2022 gets underway. And folks, I hope you were paying attention. Get your calendars out. Farm Progress Show 2022, really just around the corner. A few months until August in Boone, Iowa. Get those plans made. In the meantime, folks, we'll be here each week bringing you the news that matters to agriculture. Please join us same time, same place, right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.